Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with a Mishna Yomi Masechet Shabbat. We are up to Perek Yutet Mishnah Aleph. Today's Mishnah should be Leilu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden. Amen. This chapter deals with the laws relating to circumcision on Shabbat. The last Mishnah in the previous chapter taught that if the 8th day after a boy's birth is on Shabbat, we perform a circumcision with all its requirements. Now the commentaries explain, based off the Gemara, based off the Mishnayot, based off the Psukim, that usually it is forbidden to cause bleeding on Shabbat, like we learned in chapter 14, Mishnah 1. However, the Torah emphasizes that circumcision must take place on the 8th day in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 12, Pasuk 3, which teaches that even if the 8th day falls on Shabbat, the mitzvah of circumcision overrides the prohibitions of Shabbat, as the Gemara explains on page 132a in Masechet Shabbat. Now, this Mishnah discusses whether it is also permitted to do melachan Shabbat in order to prepare for a circumcision. Rabbi Eliezer says, Im lo evi chli me'erev Shabbat, if one did not bring a circumcising instrument, such as a knife or a scalpel, before Shabbat to the house where the baby is to be circumcised, mivio b'Shabbat, he may bring it on Shabbat even through a public domain, because we may perform melacha even to prepare for circumcision on Shabbat, even if it could have been done before Shabbat. Miguleh, and when bringing it through a public domain, he should leave the knife uncovered while he carries it to demonstrate how special this mitzvah is, that we even violate Shabbat for its sake. Ubasakana, however, in times of danger, meaning when a non-Jewish government has decreed that Jews may not perform circumcision, mechaseu al pi edim, he should cover it in front of witnesses before taking it out to avoid suspicion, meaning the witnesses can then confirm that he is carrying a knife from circumcision and not a personal item. And the commentaries explain no witnesses are necessary when he carries a knife openly, since everyone can see that he's carrying a knife and they will assume it's for a circumcision. However, when the knife is concealed, people cannot tell that the concealed item is a knife and they will suspect that he's carrying a personal item. Vodamar Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer said further, Kotin etzim la'asod pechamin v'la'asod kli barzel. If no knife is available on Shabbat, we may even cut down trees, burn the wood to make charcoal, and then light the charcoal so that the heat can be used to shape an iron instrument for circumcising. And the commentaries explain, according to Rabbi Eliezer, even though these activities are many steps removed from the circumcision itself, they are permitted for the sake of circumcision. And the commentators point out this process would involve several melachot: cutting down the trees, burning the wood, extinguishing the flames so that the wood turns to charcoal, rekindling the charcoal, heating the metal, and shaping the metal into a knife. But again, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if no other knife is available, these activities would all be permitted, since without them the circumcision could not be done. However, Rabbi Akiva disagrees. The Mishnah says, Klal amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva stated a rule, which the Rav tells us, Paligat Rabbi Eliezer. He's coming to argue in Rabbi Eliezer. Kol melacha she'efshar la'asotah me'erev Shabbat enah docha et Shabbat. Any work that is possible to do before Shabbat does not override the laws of Shabbat. Therefore, no preparations for circumcision may be done on Shabbat if they involve doing melacha, since every preparation can be done before Shabbat. And any work that is impossible to do before Shabbat, meaning the actual circumcision, does override the laws of Shabbat. And the commentaries explain, according to Rabbi Akiva, only the circumcision itself, which cannot be done before Shabbat because it's not yet the 8th day, may be done on Shabbat. The preparations for the circumcision, however, can all be done before Shabbat begins. Therefore, if one did not do them ahead of time, they may not be done on Shabbat. And the Rav says, V'alacha ki Rabbi Akiva, the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. That is in Rabotai of Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Bet now continues, just as an introduction. The process of the circumcision is to remove the foreskin and uncover the atara, the corona. This is accomplished in 2 stages. First, the foreskin is removed. This is known as milah, circumcision. And then the remaining thin membrane is slit and pulled back. This is known as priya, uncovering. After this, some blood is drawn out of the wound to prevent swelling, and the wound is treated with medicine and bandaged. Our Mishnah teaches how these steps should be carried out on Shabbat. Osin kol tzochem milah b'Shabbat. We may perform all that is needed for a circumcision on Shabbat. Mohalin uporin. We may circumcise, meaning cut off the foreskin, and uncover the corona by tearing and pulling back the membrane, since these steps are both required to fulfill the mitzvah. Umotzitzin, and we may draw blood out of the wound, since not doing so would put the child's life in danger. And the commentators explain drawing blood, known as mitzitza, prevents blood from clotting under the skin, and causing swelling. If swelling were to occur, the child's life would be at risk, and that's why it's permitted to draw the blood even on Shabbat. V'notnin aleh ispelanit v'chamon. And we may place a bandage and crushed cumin on it to help the wound heal, which again, normally we do not use medicine on Shabbat like we saw in chapter 14, Mishnah 3 and 4. But in this case, however, we're not treating the wound could endanger the child's life. It is permitted to use medicine. Imloch shachak me'erev Shabbat. If one did not crush the cumin before Shabbat, he may not do so in the usual way on Shabbat. The commentators explain, since this would be a melacha, because the Rav explains crushing spices is a tolada of grinding. If the only way to crush cumin was to grind it in a normal way, it would be permitted because a child's life is in danger. But since it can also be crushed in an unusual way, we do so in order to avoid overriding a biblical prohibition. Loes b'shena v'noten. Instead, he should chew the cumin with his teeth, which, because it's an unusual method of grinding, violates only a rabbinic prohibition, because again, a melacha done in an unusual manner is only rabbinically forbidden, and he can place it on the wound in this way. He does not violate Shabbat more than necessary. Now, it was common to beat wine and oil together in a bowl as one would beat eggs, and then apply the mixture to the wound as medicine. The Mishnah discusses what should be done if this mixture was not prepared before Shabbat. Imlot taraf yain v'shemen ne'erev Shabbat. If one did not beat wine and oil together before Shabbat, it is forbidden to do so on Shabbat. The commentators explain, because the Torah Yisrael says it is rabbinically forbidden to beat or forcefully mix food in a bowl on Shabbat, because it gives the impression that one is preparing the food to be cooked. And therefore, Yinaten zeh b'atzmo v'zeh b'atzmo. Instead, the Mishnah says the wine should be placed in the bowl by itself and the oil should be placed in the bowl by itself, so they can mix together on their own. Since the oil and wine will heal the wound effectively without being beaten, it is forbidden to beat them on Shabbat. Now, after the wound was treated, people would cover it with a cloth that was known as a shirt. This was a strip of cloth that was shaped like a tube and designed to fit around the child's member, and its purpose was to make sure that the skin would not move back over the area that had been circumcised. The Mishnah teaches what to do if this cloth, this shirt, was not prepared before Shabbat. And we may not make a new quote-unquote shirt for the wound, because doing so would be considered completing a utensil. But one may wrap a cloth around it. If one did not prepare a cloth before Shabbat by bringing it to the appropriate place, he may wrap a cloth around his finger as if he were wearing it and bring it from a different house, even if he must pass through a courtyard in which is rabbinically forbidden to carry. And the commentaries explain, by wearing the cloth around his finger instead of holding it, he's carrying it in an unusual manner, which violates only rabbinic prohibition. And in this case, the sages allowed us to transport the cloth in this unusual way for the sake of the mitzvah of circumcision. However, we're going to see they didn't allow it in all circumstances. And again, the Mishnah concludes, "Vafilu mechatzer acheret." He may do so even if he's bringing it from a different courtyard from which it's rabbinically forbidden to carry. And the commentators explain, the sages decreed that it is forbidden to carry in any area, such as a courtyard, which two or more people have the right to use, unless those people join together in eruvei chatzerot. Our Mishnah teaches that it's permitted to bring this cloth from one house to another, not only by crossing through a shared courtyard where there's no eruv, but even by bringing it from a different courtyard that did not join together with this one in an eruv. Right? You're bringing it from a different courtyard that didn't join together with this one in an eruv. They allowed that, although carrying from one courtyard to another usually requires an additional eruv called a shituf mevoot. The rabbis permitted in this case. Now, this implies that it would not be permitted to bring the cloth through a Reshut Rabim, where carrying is biblically forbidden in public domain, even if he carries the cloth wrapped around his finger, because since the cloth is not needed for the child's health, but only to prevent the skin from growing back over the circumcision, the commentaries explain, the art school said it quotes the Rashash, the sages did not allow a biblical menachat to be done, even in an unusual manner. And that is in Rabotai today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.